of the person, Paramasya, the Supreme, Mayaya, by the material energy, Durantaya, of great potency, Asprishta, unaffected, Mati, intelligence, Samastadrik, seer or knower of everything. Taya, by the same illusory energy. Hata Atmasu, bewildered at heart. Anukarmachetasu, whose hearts are attracted by fruitive activities. Anugraham, mercy. Kartum, to do. Iha, in this case. Arhasi, desire. Prabhu, O Lord. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. My dear Lord, you are never bewildered by the formidable influence of the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore you are omniscient and should be merciful and compassionate towards those who are bewildered by the same illusory energy and are very much attached to fruitive activities. Report. A Vaishnava is never bewildered by the influence of the external energy because he is engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The Lord states in Bhagavad Gita 7:14, Daivihesha gunamai mamamaya dharatiya mam evaye prapadyamte mayam etam tarantite. My divine energy consists of the three modes of material nature. My divine energy consisting of the three modes of material nature is very difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. A Vaishnava should take care of those who are bewildered by this Maya instead of becoming angry with them, because without a Vaishnava's mercy, they have no way to get out of the clutches of Maya. Those who have been condemned by Maya are rescued by the mercy of the pure devotees. Panchakalpatrubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees who can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Those who are under the influence of the illusory energy are attracted to fruitive activities, but a Vaishnava preacher attracts their hearts to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Bhavangstupangsa paramasya mayaya durantayas prishta mati samastadrik taya hatatmashu anukarma chetashu anugraham kartum iharhasi prabhu. My dear Lord, you are never bewildered by the formidable influence of the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore you are omniscient and should be merciful and compassionate towards those who are bewildered by the same illusory energy and who are very much attached to fruitive activities. So we see here now, it's very clear, Lord Brahma, in speaking with Lord Shiva, is saying that you're not under the influence of the material energy. There's no problem with you, but the problem is with others. They have to, they are fallen, they have to be helped. So please, Lord Shiva, kindly show your mercy upon them. And this is actually the mission of the devotees, the Vaishnavas in this world. This world, Prabhupada is mentioning, or the verse is mentioning, Prabhupada is elaborating, how in this world the living entities are very much attached to fruitive activities. karmavad. So as you know very well, karma means action and then subsequent reaction which leads to further actions. That is the rule of the material world. And so within this karmavad system, there is, as we were mentioning yesterday, it's already there, a system of justice, judgment, the division of good and bad. It's already there. It's laid down by the Vedic scriptures. And the system of punishment is already there. Punishment at the local level, the earthly level, by government, by king, and then beyond that there is the universal judge, Yamaraj. So this is already in place. Now the Vaishnava, his mission is to deliver the living entities from all this. Therefore you find in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, as it begins in the first chapter, Parikshit Maharaj has heard in the previous canto all about the hell, the punishment suffered by the living entities who go to hell. And his question then, in the beginning of the 6th canto, the next canto, is how can these unfortunate living entities be delivered? What can be their way of salvation? So that is the inquiry of the Vaishnava. That is his heartfelt mission. What can I do to save these fallen souls? So we were speaking yesterday of ethics and morality. So ethics and morality, they're also there in the material world, but only up to a certain point. Only up to ethics and morality in the material world is again this karmic judgment in terms of karma. But the real ethics, in other words, the real logic behind morality, is that we should become devotees of the Lord. We should surrender to Krishna, whatever our position may be under the law of karma. We find that Krishna is so merciful. Actually, he's telling in 11th canto a very interesting section of verses in the 11th canto where he's speaking to Uddhav about pure devotional service. And he's telling Uddhava about these the living entities who are delivered when he appears in this world. They're delivered by surrendering to him exclusively. And he gives a whole list of living entities. And the way he describes them is very interesting. He speaks of the gopis as being in the category of women. We may think of the gopis as the Lord's most intimate associates, but he's speaking of them in the category of village women. And then he mentions the Kaliya serpent, he mentions Hanuman as a monkey. So he's referring, and there's others, so it's interesting that he's referring to their position in terms of karma. And in that light, it doesn't seem that their position is very good. It's a kind. I think it's Krishna, since he's the origin of everything. So I think when he's speaking these verses, he's being a little ironic. Of course, we know that they're all great devotees, but he's pointing out that if you want to analyze these devotees from their position of their karmic position, then they could all be termed fallen souls. And yet they have become the most glorious devotees by simply one thing, surrendering to Krishna. There was no change of their external position. You see, this is not our message. There's some who understand like that, who think that the devotees in the Hare Krishna movement who are coming from fallen background, Western background, so they should execute Krishna consciousness in this lifetime. And then they'll have the opportunity in the next life to take birth in a nice Hindu family. And then as Hindus, in Hindu bodies, they can become perfect. Go back home, back to God. But from a Western body, it's not possible. So anyway, you do your... this is their analysis, that chanting Hare Krishna for us is a karma kanda activity. It will give us the right karma. And then... this is nonsense. Prabhupada, when he heard that some devotees received a blessing, so-called, some Brahmana told devotees that you are doing very nice, and in the next life you'll be able to be born as Brahmins in India, and then you will attain moksha, liberation. And Prabhupada said this is like blessing a high government officer that in your next life you may become a policeman. And that there's one story of an old lady who was involved in a land dispute in an Indian village. She was a village lady. So her experience of life was more or less limited to that village. And then this was during the days of the British rule of India. So to settle the land dispute, one British ICE officer, the Indian Civil, ICS, it's called, Indian Civil Service. So in those days, that used to be mainly British persons in this ICS. So he came to that village and he settled up the land dispute in the favor of this old lady. So she wanted to give him a blessing. So that was her blessing. May you become a policeman in the next life. She was just thinking that the most important person that we know of in the village is the policeman. So he did so nicely, so let him become policeman. So this is important for us to keep in the forefront, that our mission is not just to reinforce the existing karmic morality which is already there in the material world. But the mission of the devotee is to lead people to the moksha dwara, to the door of liberation. Srila Prabhupada so nicely in the last sentence, he says, those who are under the influence of the illusory energy are attracted to fruitive activities. And that again means they're attracted to the duality of good and evil, auspicious, inauspicious, and so on. But a Vaishnava preacher attracts their hearts to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So, yesterday Tapas Prabhu came to speak to me after yesterday's class, so we talked about some interesting things, and how we as devotees are meant to sacrifice everything. We were speaking yesterday of the ethics of sacrifice. So our problem in this movement, when we speak of social questions, social development, Our problem in this movement is that we stubbornly cling as individuals to the idea of myself being the center of attention. Tapas was pointing out, he was saying, I just quote him, it's not from me, that in the Nordic countries this is very strong. People are very strongly attached to this idea that I myself am the center. They want to, at all costs, maintain their independence. And this is, well, it's quite opposite from the proper attitude of the devotee. So in this ethics of sacrifice, sacrifice means to give. So a devotee, you see, in Vedic culture, this is there in everyone, to give. I was saying yesterday how you can see Bali Maharaj, Jarasandha, they're giving. They're not clinging, they understand that giving is good, to sacrifice is good. Even a demon in the Vedic culture understands this. He's ready. Bali Maharaj is ready to give his whole kingdom. He just conquered this kingdom, 3 worlds. And then a little boy comes, a little boy Brahman, and asks for 3 steps of land. And just see Bali Maharaj, he's not thinking, ha, what a sucker this guy is. Yeah, okay, take your 3 steps, I don't care. But he's saying, what, this is not enough. 3 steps, I'm ready to give you. He actually said, I'm ready to give you everything. He mentioned different things, and then in the end he said, I'm ready to give you everything. And then Shukracharya warned him, this is Vishnu, he will take everything. So you better back down. And then Bali Maharaj thought, no, because he was so nicely trained up in this culture of sacrifice. Let him take everything. Take your 3 steps, I don't care. And then when he took everything in 2 steps, then he bowed his head and said, all right, you place your foot here as the 3rd step. Take me. So, and Bali Maharaj is a demon. But just see how nicely trained he is in this ethics of sacrifice. That's an internal, we can call it a moral compass. You see, when we talk about social development in ISKCON, from what I've seen, the discussion is all external. Like devotees immediately come to some pragmatic point, like what should we do? What should the grihastas do? Should there be family insurance? Is it okay for devotees to work outside for karma? They have their whole list of pragmatic questions that they want answered. And then they think when they have the answers, when they have this map of what to do, then all our problems will be solved. And what is the intent behind solving these problems? Then we can put our feet up, stretch out, and enjoy life. Call for a nice drink, sip it. And this is already going on in the material world. They have their bureaucracies, they have all their government offices, and they depersonalize all the problems to just certain patterns of behavior, and you have to fit, someone that wants to come and say get married or whatever they want to do, and they have to fit themselves into that pattern of behavior, and the bureaucrats are examining and sending, well, this is not good enough, go back, you have to fulfill more conditions. And and then this is all to make life fit into a certain pattern. Again, this karmic pattern. And then at the end of the day, everyone can think that they've solved the problems and can relax and enjoy life. That also is the karmic ethic. But it's not the Vedic ethic. Vedic ethic is that we should give ourselves. And this is good. Those who are trained in Vedic culture know that this is actually the goal, to perform sacrifice. And how far away this is from the self-centered idea. This is a big, big gap between thinking that at the end of the day I should, be nice and nicely situated in my soft chair, secure, comfortable, enjoying life, having solved all problems. So we're speaking of Vedic culture. What to speak of Vaishnava culture, which is the perfection of Vedic culture. So this Krishna consciousness movement, that was Srila Prabhupada's vision. He spoke of this movement as a welfare movement, existing just for the welfare of all living entities. And that means everyone in this movement is expected to be a welfare worker, giving everything for the welfare of all other living entities. And so far as I can see in our problems of social development, the main problem is that we are not making this connection in our own life. We have our particular service, especially, of course, for the preachers, then it's obvious. For someone who's out every day distributing Prabhupada's books, or going in to schools or any situation to preach, and he can't help but be conscious of his duty as giving himself for the benefit of those persons that he has seen. But for others who have other kinds of services, other devotees, it may not be so clear, this connection, and they think more in terms of their own self-interest. That I do my service, and then at the end of the day I get something in return, and I'm happy. And this again is actually not. This is not our culture. Not our culture at all. Rather, we should be seeing how in our service, whatever it may be, even washing pots in the kitchen, or whatever, that this service is meant, it is part of the preaching mission. It is meant for everyone's benefit. It is preaching. We are trying to persuade living entities to give up their karmic attitudes and to surrender to Krishna. So we have philosophy which we preach and which we represent for that end. We can answer all the questions about, what the universe looks like, and how the energies of the material nature are working, and how many demigods there are, and this and that, all these nice questions of Sankhya. And we're generally all very enthusiastic about these things. But also within philosophy is this ethics, and ethics means behavior, moral behavior. That is what you do, that is culture. It is not theory, it is culture. This is also part of philosophy. And this is actually what convinces people, really. We can answer all their technical questions and then finally persuade them, enter our movement. And then when they join the movement, they look around and start to realize that, wait a minute, this is the same thing, just all these self-interested people, at the end of the day, retiring into their little cubby holes and locking the door. Don't want to be bothered because I've done my service. Leave me alone. But what does this mean? This means that the philosophy has not gone beyond theory, and therefore that's why we have social problems. It's quite clear. So preaching is for everyone. Everyone is to be a preacher, and that means everyone is to understand the connection of their service, whatever it may be, even if it's some backroom service, some support service. But this is a preaching movement, so everything we do is simply meant to deliver the fallen conditioned souls. Delivering does not mean just to pry them out of their material situation, to bring them into our movement. They have to stay in our movement. No? And to stay in our movement, you see, they're coming out of the material world, and they're feeling the relief of liberation. But if they come into our movement and the same burden is again placed on their shoulders, then they will leave our movement too. So, to exist within this movement, to stay within this movement means one has to be experiencing liberation, activity in liberation. And that is accomplished through sacrifice, culminating in the sacrifice of the holy names. Okay? Any questions? Yes?
One can do sacrifice or to give others, but one can anyway still be selfish, like saying, okay, I do it and it's a sacrifice myself, it's good, I feel good, right? So it's selfish.
Yes, but the sacrifice is being a culture. It is in the mode of goodness. And Lord Krishna says in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita that when one performs sacrifice, then he tastes the results of sacrifice, which are nectarian. So, in the mode of goodness, then one's life becomes illuminated. And because there's a taste, he becomes attached. This higher taste attaches him to the process of sacrifice, and that's how he makes progress. So, this selfishness may be there, because one can perform sacrifice for selfish ends. Daksha is an example. But when one is within this culture, when one is firmly situated, attached to it because of the nectarian results of sacrifice, then that position will help him to advance, you see. Just by being in the culture, performing sacrifice, tasting the nectar of the results of sacrifice, he'll want to do more and more and more and more. That sacrifice is Krishna himself. Yajna is Krishna himself. It is Krishna's arrangement for us to go back home, back to Godhead. So therefore we should become situated nicely in this culture. And we will cross over our own selfishness. Yes?
Is there any specific thing one should do to get less selfish?
Well, as I said, this is a culture of giving. So just as just think of the demons, as I said. Jarasandha was ready to give his head. Bali Maharaj gave his head. So we should always be prepared to give. And we have every day these opportunities to give in our relationships with the devotees and our interaction with the persons outside. We should always be ready to give ourselves in whatever ways are required, you see, rather than this not giving is impersonal, you see, avoiding stepping back. It's not my business. And there's a hotel, famous hotel, I don't know the name of it, but they train up all the staff that whatever job you have, that if a customer comes to you and wants anything, you have to stop that job. Say the guy who changes the light bulb. This is his business. He's the electrician. So he's just, going into the hotel with his big ladder and climbing up and changing the light bulb. So now, let's say some hotel guest is coming by and sees him and then asks him the question which has nothing to do with electricity. That, I need to make I need to send a fax, let's say. Where shall I go? So the rule of the hotel is that person changing the light bulb. He has to come down from his ladder. He has to take that person to the right place and introduce him. This is the fax secretary. I'm so successful. This hotel chain is so successful because this is personal. This is actually the meaning of personalism. So this is what we're here for. Our philosophy is personal. And this is how the personal philosophy manifests in this willingness to give, to help the living entities on their way back home, back to Godhead, at every moment. So it's an internal culture. I'm always a little doubtful whenever I hear these questions formulated in terms of, well, just give us a list of what we should do. This is external. It just leads to bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is a substitute for culture in the modern world. Just give us a list of what, and then we can, at the end of the day, we'll have a list. It's all ticked off. We did it. What are you getting on our case for? See, we did the list. Just another form of impersonal, a fancy form of impersonalism, where one can say, no, I did everything I was supposed to do. You can't get on my case. Leave me alone. Lock the door. Get out of my life. I did my duty. Yes?
You mentioned yesterday that your devotee sees to your heart.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe in different circumstances, two different cases can be judged in two different ways. But how will this be in the society and being? Will it be will it be chaotic? If you know that transgression of one law can be judged in different way in different cases.
No, but this is in Vedic society. The great saints and sages are respected by everyone for their judgment. That's why everyone goes to them to ask them to settle such matters. So they're on the transcendental platform, and when they speak, they give a judgment. Everyone accepts it. This chaotic situation means that a society which does not have faith in the direction of spiritual authorities. Therefore, they try to judge things on the basis of external mundane morality. But you see, that then becomes subject to everyone's self-interest. Like the karmic society today, they have their laws and they're always making more laws. Because they have their laws, but the people are interpreting the laws according to their self-interests. Even though there's laws, there's still court cases challenging these laws. So then they have to make more laws and more laws and more laws and more laws, and it never ends. It's a constant fight. Because the basis is self-interest, selfishness. So this is we're speaking of the karmi, karmi morality, or this attraction to the conditioned soul's attraction to fruitive activities. What is that? That means selfishness. That's what he's attracted to, selfishness. He wants to live in a society in which the ethic is selfishness. And therefore, yes, they want to have laws which protect selfishness. And the laws are fine as long as I win. And if I lose, then I go to the next instance, and then finally Supreme Court, and so that is why society is chaotic, because the reigning morality is selfishness. In Vedic society, the morality is sacrifice. Sacrifice is there's a verse in the Rig Veda which says sacrifice leads everyone to the great sages. Very interesting verse. That by following the track of sacrifice, performing sacrifice, one follows the tracks of the Vedas to the great sages. That's where the Vedic culture ends up, at the lotus feet of the great sages. They are the authorities, and we accept what they say. So there has to be this laukika morality law that is always there to regulate everyone's daily activities. But this law is handed down from authorities, higher authorities. Not that we should make up the law ourselves based upon our own so-called needs. And when there are when there's some confusion about how to apply the law, and that is very common, you find. It is very common. Actually, that is you can say the actual tension. It is said in literature that in order to capture the mind, there must be tension, there must be conflict. Those who write, this is the thing you learn, there has to be conflict. So also in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in all the Vedic literatures, there's a conflict situation, which attracts the mind, which draws us into the narration. And you'll find that this conflict is always about the question of ethics. What should be done? Like I was mentioning yesterday, Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna. He was actually doubting whether Krishna's directing him to fight the battle. He was doubting that is right. It was an ethical doubt. And if you analyze also this between Lord Shiva and Daksha, this narration, it's the same tension is there. Daksha and his followers were convinced that in terms of morality, in terms of proper behavior, Lord Shiva is, who is this person? He's just out of it. And then Lord Shiva's followers, they denounced. So this is the whole thing. Who's right, who's wrong? What is proper, what is improper? How to understand this? This is the tension that draws our interest to these narrations. So how are these tensions, how are these contradictions settled? Here we're seeing Lord Brahma, who is the guru of all the demigods. He's settling, and they're all accepting. Anything else? Yeah?
Yesterday you were speaking about ethics and that this is coming from childhood, that you're learning by your parents to sacrifice and like that. When one doesn't have that upbringing, isn't it that one has to follow a certain set of rules to learn how to learn the sacrificing? As I understand it's coming just naturally from just how you follow yourself. How to learn that.
Yes, you have to learn that. That's a fact. So we have to apply. You see, the sacrifice is there. This is movement of Sankirtan, the sacrifice of the holy name. So it's there. And the thing to do is we have to understand that this is to be applied in every aspect of our life. It's not just a formal duty that we execute from 9 to 5 every day, punching the clock. Ding. but it is meant to be our whole culture. And so it's there. It's it's not mysterious. It's not something that's we haven't heard anything about. It's new. I mean, we know what sacrifice is. We know that this is the Sankirtan movement. But what we may not know is that it is to pervade our very being. It is to become our very value, the value behind everything we do, even in the simple most activities. So what does that mean? It means to take it seriously, that's all. It's Krishna consciousness, what can you say? If one is serious about Krishna consciousness, then one is going to do this. Because, it's not that this is all, this question is just floating in a vacuum. We have our own drama that we're living in. On the one side, there's Maya. On the other side, there's Krishna, and we're in the middle. And to the degree that we surrender to Krishna, our body, our mind, our words, to that degree we are free from Maya's influence. And to the degree that we remain selfish, we hold back, we want to just give officially and then have our own life separate from that. To that degree we will be victims of Maya. And for one who's serious, he doesn't want to be victimized by Maya. That's horrible. You see? For one who's serious. For one who's not serious, well, that's another matter. But for one who's serious, he or she cannot stand to be victimized by Maya. Cannot stand to have a head full of all kinds of nasty thoughts, nasty desires cooking up in the heart that they're having to somehow suppress. So a serious devotee wants to have a clean heart, clean mind, wants to be able to act in devotional service free of the contamination of the modes of nature. So then we should just, yes, it begins with a theoretical understanding. The solution to the problem is, and you must give yourself, if you have a problem in your mind, you must give that mind, surrender that mind to Krishna. Give. Mm-hmm.
Because my mind, even Mr. Kennedy tried to educate the Americans to this principle of sacrifice by telling them that you should not ask what the nation will do for you, but you should ask what you can do for the nation.
Yeah,
because he got shot later for that.
Yeah. Supposed to give to Krishna. Yeah, in the material society they make these appeals also, but it's to something material. But there's a requirement there of faith. Just as Lord Krishna is saying in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that this system of sacrifice will satisfy everyone's desire. Everyone will become happy. In the 10th verse of the 3rd chapter. He says this is the system that has been given so that everyone can satisfy all their desires, be happy, and then achieve the supreme goal of life. So we must have faith in that. That's actually what is required. And speaking with Tapas yesterday, we were reflecting on how our upbringing is just opposite from that. We think happiness is in how much you can hang on to, how independent you can be, doing things your own way. You see, this is the conflict. That we don't have faith in just giving everything to Krishna's mission completely. Arjuna's problem, you see, his difficulty in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita is that he was serving, I mentioned this last night, serving his own piety, his own pious nature, instead of serving Krishna. He was doing everything right from the mundane point of view. He was materially compassionate. These are my relatives. How can I kill them? He was, as they say, making all the right noises. and Srila Prabhupada said that that's all symptomatic of being a pious person, but it is not Krishna consciousness. Just to be pious, just to be nice, just to be in the mode of goodness, and to do everything right in terms of external morality. You see, I am a good person. This is not Krishna consciousness. Because at the end of the day, the good person, he's feeling very self-satisfied. He's complacent. He's thinking, yes, I'm good, so therefore I can enjoy my life in the material world. Yeah, others should be hurt. I can understand. Others are getting harassed by the material nature because they're not good. But I'm good. So because I'm good, therefore, that therefore I should do what everybody wants to do in the material world. Gratify my senses. I deserve it because I'm good. This is not Krishna consciousness either. This is mundane morality. Alright, so I'll stop here. Suhotra Swami ki